Look at her. Don't they charge by the pound in here? The Iron Vulture's biker gang howled with laughter, their leather vests gleaming under the diner lights as Delilah Mercer sat still, pride flickering behind her pain. To them, she was just another easy target, an overweight black woman in the wrong place, at the wrong time. They had no idea who sat across from her, silent and steady, eyes calm as a gathering storm. Eli Mercer wasn't a man built for humiliation. He was a former Navy SEAL who'd faced death and won. When their laughter turned cruel, the gang didn't just cross a line. They walked straight into a war they couldn't survive. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. The autumn sun hung low over the Tennessee hills as Eli Mercer guided their weathered Ford pickup along the empty highway. His calloused hands rested easily on the wheel, but his mind wandered back to the funeral they'd just left in Mississippi. Beside him, Delilah adjusted her dress, the fabric rustling against the worn seat leather. "I still can't believe Marcus is gone," Delilah said, her voice thick with emotion. 20 years of friendship. Just... She shook her head, unable to finish. Eli nodded, his jaw tight. He was a good man, one of the best nurses I ever knew. "My mentor," Delilah sighed, dabbing at her eyes. "Lord, I'm hungry. We haven't eaten since dawn." The pickup's engine hummed steadily as they passed faded billboards and browning cornfields. After 3 hours of driving, the sight of Mason's Diner's neon sign glowing against the darkening sky was like a beacon. "Only place open on a Sunday afternoon," Eli observed, turning into the gravel parking lot. The tires crunched over loose stones as he parked between a rusty pickup and a gleaming Harley-Davidson. The diner's bell chimed as they stepped inside. The smell of coffee and fried food hung in the air, but the comfortable diner chatter died instantly. Heads turned, conversations stopped mid-sentence, and silverware clattered against plates as patrons stared. Delilah straightened her spine, holding her head high as they made their way to an empty booth. The vinyl seats squeaked under their weight, and Eli noticed how his wife's hands trembled slightly as she picked up the laminated menu. Trudy Lawson, the waitress, stood frozen behind the counter, coffee pot suspended in mid-pour. Her pale face flickered between fear and shame before she finally approached their table, her notepad clutched tight against her chest. "What can I—" she started, her voice barely above a whisper. "What can I get you folks?" "Coffee, please," Eli said quietly. "And the special." Delilah smiled warmly, trying to ease the tension. "I'll have the same, honey, and a slice of that cherry pie I see in the case." Trudy nodded quickly and hurried away, her shoes squeaking against the linoleum floor. The diner's atmosphere remained thick with unspoken hostility, punctuated by whispered comments and disapproving glances. The bell over the door jangled again, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop. Trent Mason swaggered in, followed by 3 members of his Iron Vulture's gang. Their leather vests creaked as they moved, decorated with vulture patches and white power symbols poorly disguised as heritage imagery. Trent's boots thudded heavily against the floor as he approached their booth, beer on his breath and malice in his eyes. A spider-web tattoo crawled up his neck, disappearing into his patchy beard. His followers spread out behind him like a pack of wolves. "Well, well," Trent drawled, loud enough for the entire diner to hear. "Ain't this sweet? Big Mama and her pet monkey decided to grace us with their presence." Eli's face remained impassive, but Delilah's fingers clenched around her menu. The diner had gone completely silent now, every eye fixed on their booth. Trudy returned with their coffee, her hands shaking so badly that liquid sloshed over the cup's rims. She tried to squeeze past Trent, but he blocked her path deliberately. "Now, honey," he said to Trudy, though his eyes never left Eli. "You sure you want to serve these folks? Might be bad for business, having their kind in here." "We're just trying to eat," Delilah said firmly, though her voice wavered slightly. "Like everyone else." Trent's attention snapped to her, his lips curling into a cruel smile. "Looks like you've done plenty of that already, sister. Ain't you heard? We got weight limits in here. Structural concerns and all that." A few snickers echoed from the other tables. Eli's expression hadn't changed, but something deadly flickered behind his eyes. His hands disappeared beneath the table, curling into tight fists. "Boy," Trent spat the word at Eli, "you need to learn your place. This here's a man's establishment, and you're wearing a man's skin like it's some kind of costume." Eli remained silent, his breathing steady and controlled. Years of SEAL training had taught him to master his emotions, to channel rage into precision. But Delilah could see the storm building behind his calm exterior. Trent reached across the table, deliberately knocking Delilah's coffee cup. Hot liquid cascaded across the table and into her lap. She gasped, jumping up as the coffee soaked through her dress. The diner erupted in cruel laughter. Some patrons turned away, ashamed, but others joined in openly with Trent's display of power. Trudy pressed herself against the counter, clutching her coffee pot like a shield. Eli rose slowly from his seat, each movement measured and precise. The laughter died in patches as people noticed his stance, the perfect balance, the controlled energy of a predator. But before he could speak, Delilah grabbed a napkin, dabbing at her dress. "It's fine," she said, her voice tight with dignity. "Just an accident, right?" Trent grinned, showing tobacco-stained teeth. "That's right. Just an accident." "Clumsy me." Eli settled back into his seat, but his eyes never left Trent's face. When he spoke, his voice was soft, barely above a whisper, but it carried through the silent diner like a blade. "Delilah, finish your pie. I'll handle this." Trent's boots scraped against the linoleum as he circled their booth like a vulture. His gang members spread out, blocking the exits. One of them pulled out a phone, grinning as he started recording. "What's the matter, boy?" Trent grabbed the back of Eli's chair, giving it a rough shake. "Cat got your tongue." He shoved again, harder this time, making Eli's coffee slosh onto the table. Delilah's hands trembled as she tried to eat her pie, keeping her eyes down. Every bite seemed to fuel Trent's cruelty. "Look at her," Trent sneered, nudging one of his gang members. "Like feeding time at the zoo, ain't it, boys?" The man with the phone laughed, zooming in on Delilah's face. Eli remained perfectly still, his breaths measured and deep. His eyes tracked every movement around him with the precision of a combat veteran. The diner had gone completely silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and Trent's heavy breathing. "You think you're better than us, don't you?" Trent leaned down, his face inches from Eli's. "Sitting here in my daddy's diner like you belong." His hand shot out, grabbing Delilah's plate. "Well, here's what I think about that." The plate crashed to the floor, sending cherry pie and ceramic shards skittering across the linoleum. Delilah jumped, a small cry escaping her lips. "Look at that fat sow jump," Trent howled. "Like a scared pig in a—" Eli stood. The movement was so smooth, so controlled, that it took everyone a moment to realize what was happening. His chair hadn't even scraped the floor. 1 second he was seated, the next he was upright, standing at his full height. Time seemed to slow down. Trent's mouth was still open, the rest of his insult dying on his lips as Eli's right hand shot up in a blur. The crack of Trent's nose breaking echoed through the diner like a gunshot. Blood sprayed across his leather vest as he stumbled backward. The gang member with the phone lunged forward, but Eli was already moving. His elbow caught the man's temple, sending him spinning. In one fluid motion, Eli grabbed his attacker's leather vest and used the man's own momentum to flip him over a nearby booth. The crash of his body hitting the table mixed with screams from other diners. The third man reached for something in his vest, but Eli was faster. His hand clamped down on the man's throat like a steel trap, driving him back against the wall. The gang member's boots dangled inches off the floor as he clawed desperately at Eli's grip. "Eli, stop!" Delilah's voice cut through the chaos. "Please!" The entire sequence had taken less than 5 seconds. Trent lay curled on the floor, blood pooling between his fingers as he clutched his nose. The second man was motionless in the wreckage of the booth, and the third wheezed against the wall, his face turning purple. Eli's expression hadn't changed. No rage, no satisfaction. Just the cold efficiency of a trained warrior. He studied the man he held against the wall for a moment longer before releasing his grip. The gang member collapsed, gasping and coughing. The diner was frozen in shocked silence. Several people had their phones out now, recording the aftermath. Trudy stood behind the counter, the coffee pot still clutched to her chest, her face pale with terror. Eli straightened his shirt, brushing off invisible dust. When he spoke, his voice was calm and clear, meant for everyone in the room. "You just watched evil happen," he said, looking from face to face. "Remember that. Remember how it started. And remember how it ended." Delilah gathered her purse with shaking hands, stepping carefully around the broken plate and the groaning men on the floor. Eli placed a $20 bill on the table, smooth and deliberate, before taking his wife's arm. They walked toward the door together, their footsteps echoing in the stunned silence. Phones followed their movement, capturing every step. As they passed Trent, still curled on the floor, Eli paused. "The next time you want to test a man's patience," he said softly, "make sure you know what kind of man he is." The bell chimed as they stepped out into the parking lot. The afternoon sun had dipped lower, casting long shadows across the gravel. Behind them, they could hear the first whispers starting, the rustle of movement as people rushed to help the fallen gang members. Through the diner's large front window, Eli caught his reflection, a tall, composed figure in simple clothes, nothing about him suggesting the violence he was capable of, but there was something in his eyes now, a weight that hadn't been there before. Beside him, Delilah squeezed his arm, her touch both grateful and afraid. The phones kept recording as they walked to their truck. Some people had come out to the parking lot, keeping their distance but capturing every moment. Inside the diner, Trent's pained groans mixed with the sound of approaching sirens in the distance. Eli helped Delilah into the passenger seat, then walked around to the driver's side. His movements were still perfectly controlled, but now they carried the heavy certainty of a man who knew this moment would have consequences. The truck's engine rumbled to life, drowning out the whispers and the clicking of phone cameras. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across Eli's backyard as he worked methodically on the fence. His hands moved with practiced precision, replacing rotted boards and tightening loose nails. The physical labor helped quiet his mind after the diner incident, each strike of his hammer driving back memories of the morning's violence. Inside their modest one-story home, Delilah's humming drifted through the screen door. She was making cornbread, her way of finding normalcy in chaos. The familiar tune of an old gospel song mixed with the rhythmic sound of Eli's work. The crunch of tires on gravel cut through the peaceful scene. Eli looked up as 2 police cruisers rolled to a stop in front of their house, their white paint gleaming in the evening light. Sheriff Randall Daniels stepped out of the first car, his badge catching the sun as he adjusted his gun belt. 2 deputies emerged from the second cruiser, hands resting casually on their holsters. "Evening, Mercer," Sheriff Daniels called out, his voice carrying a false friendliness that set Eli's nerves on edge. "Need to have a word with you." Eli set down his hammer carefully, wiping his hands on his work jeans. "Something I can help you with, Sheriff?" The screen door creaked as Delilah stepped onto the back porch, her flour-covered hands gripping the railing. The humming had stopped. Had some trouble down at Mason's today, Daniel said, moving closer. His boots crushed the grass Eli had just mowed that morning. Got 3 men in the hospital. One with a broken nose, another with a concussion, third one can barely speak from throat trauma. He pulled out a pair of handcuffs. That's assault and public endangerment, son. Those men attacked us first, Delilah's voice rang out, strong despite her trembling hands. They were harassing us, throwing our food. Ma'am, Daniels cut her off, not even looking her way. I'm gonna need you to stay quiet while I do my job. The deputies spread out, flanking Eli. Their hands hadn't left their weapons. I acted in self-defense, Eli said calmly, his military training evident in his controlled tone. There were witnesses, phone recordings. Funny thing about those recordings, Daniel smirked. They all seem to show you attacking 3 unarmed citizens without provocation. Turn around, hands behind your back. A truck engine rumbled, and Eli caught sight of Trent Mason parked across the street. His face was a mess of bandages, but his smug grin was visible even from this distance. He raised his phone, clearly recording the moment. Don't you touch him! Delilah started down the porch steps. This is wrong, and you know it! One deputy moved to block her path, while the other grabbed Eli's wrist, twisting it roughly behind his back. The cold metal of the handcuffs bit into his skin. Delilah, Eli called out, his voice steady. Call Marcus at the law office. Tell him what's happening. He met his wife's eyes, trying to convey strength rather than the anger burning in his chest. Oh, you'll get your phone call, Daniel said, leading Eli toward the cruiser. Eventually, the drive to the station was silent. Eli watched through the window as their small town passed by, the same streets he'd driven for years now feeling suddenly hostile. People stopped to stare as the cruiser passed, word of the diner incident having spread like wildfire. At the station, they led him through processing with deliberate slowness. Each request to make his statement was met with, "In due time." Each mention of his right to a phone call was answered with, "When we're ready." Hours passed in a holding cell that smelled of bleach and despair. Other inmates came and went, but Eli sat perfectly still on the metal bench, his mind racing through scenarios and options. His SEAL training had prepared him for captivity, but this was different. This was betrayal wrapped in a badge. Through the bars, he caught fragments of conversation from the front desk. A woman's voice, sharp and insistent. "I need to see the booking report for today's arrests. Miss Price, you know we don't release that information immediately. It's public record, Deputy. Or should I write about how the Sheriff's Department is blocking press access?" Eli filed away the name. Someone asking questions could be useful. The clicking of boots on concrete announced Sheriff Daniels's return. He stood outside the cell, keys jingling in his hand, that same smug smile still plastered on his face. "Comfortable?" Daniels asked, leaning against the bars. "You know, I've been sheriff here for 22 years. Know what I've learned?" He paused, studying Eli like a specimen. Folks who don't understand their place tend to have accidents. Bad ones. Eli met his gaze steadily, refusing to look away. His voice, when he spoke, was quiet but clear. "And what place would that be, Sheriff?" "You picked the wrong town, boy." Daniels spat the last word like poison. "Should have kept driving this morning. Should have kept your hands to yourself. Now you're gonna learn what happens to people who don't know their role around here." Eli didn't respond, but his eyes narrowed slightly, taking in every detail of the sheriff's face, his stance, his mannerisms. Not with fear, no. This was pure tactical assessment. Each threat, each abuse of power was another piece of information to be stored and analyzed. The sheriff's radio crackled, breaking the tension. He stepped back from the cell, that self-satisfied grin still in place. "Enjoy your stay, Mercer. We'll get to your statement. Eventually." The morning sun beat down on the courthouse steps, as Delilah climbed them one at a time, her purse clutched tight against her chest. Inside was an envelope containing their savings, scraped together for bail money. Each step felt heavier than the last, but her chin remained high. The courthouse lobby buzzed with morning activity. Heads turned as she entered, conversations dropping to whispers. A group of older white women at the clerk's desk stopped their chatter, watching her with poorly hidden disdain. "Can I help you?" The clerk's voice dripped with fake sweetness. "I'm here to post bail for Eli Mercer," Delilah said clearly, her voice carrying across the quiet lobby. Someone snickered behind her. "Guess her boyfriend got what was coming to him," a man muttered, loud enough for her to hear. Delilah's hands trembled slightly as she counted out the money, but her voice remained steady. The clerk processed the paperwork with exaggerated slowness, making her repeat information multiple times. "District Attorney Pike's office?" Delilah asked, once the bail was posted. "I need to file a complaint about what happened at Mason's Diner." The clerk pointed down a long hallway, her lips pressed into a thin line. As Delilah walked away, laughter erupted behind her. She caught fragments of whispered slurs that made her stomach turn. The DA's office was cool and dark, wood-paneled walls lined with legal texts and hunting trophies. Owen Pike sat behind a massive desk, not bothering to stand when she entered. His suit was expensive, his manner dismissive. Delilah slipped her phone from her purse, thumbing the record button before setting it on her lap, screen down. "Mrs. Mercer," Pike drawled, "what can I do for you today?" "I want to file a formal complaint about the attack at Mason's Diner," she said, pulling out her written statement. "My husband and I were assaulted. We have witnesses." "Attack?" Pike's eyebrows rose. "The only attack I'm aware of is your husband assaulting 3 respected members of this community. They threw our food, called us names, threatened us." "Mrs. Mercer," Pike interrupted, leaning forward, "let me be frank. Your husband caused serious injuries to 3 men. We have multiple witnesses stating he was the aggressor. You people always want trouble, then cry discrimination when you face consequences." Delilah's back stiffened. "You people! You know exactly what I mean." Pike's voice turned cold. "This isn't Mississippi. We don't tolerate troublemakers here, regardless of their background." "So you won't even investigate?" Delilah's voice shook with anger. "Investigation's complete as far as I'm concerned." Pike shuffled papers on his desk. "Your husband's lucky he's only facing assault charges. Now, if there's nothing else?" Delilah stood slowly, her phone secure in her hand. "There will be something else, Mr. Pike. Count on it." Back home, Delilah's hands flew across her laptop keyboard. She created an anonymous social media account and uploaded the recording of Pike's thinly veiled racism. Within hours, it started circulating in local Facebook groups and Twitter feeds. Then something unexpected happened. Someone from the diner posted their video of the incident, showing Trent and his gang's harassment, the coffee spilling, the slurs. It showed Eli's precise, controlled response. No wild swinging, no excessive force. Just efficient self-defense moves that ended the threat. The video spread quickly through local circles. Comments poured in, "That's a trained fighter right there. Military precision. They had it coming. Been terrorizing folks for years. Watch how they attacked first. Clear self-defense." But for every supportive comment, hatred bubbled up. "Animals don't belong in decent establishments. Should have known his place. They're asking for trouble coming here." Delilah watched the comments roll in, saving screenshots of the worst ones. Each hateful word strengthened her resolve. This wasn't just about one incident anymore. It was about years of quiet suffering, of looking the other way, of accepting the unacceptable. The phone rang. It was the jail. Eli was being released. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the parking lot as Delilah waited outside the county jail. Her heart pounded As the metal doors creaked open, Eli emerged, still wearing his work clothes from yesterday, looking tired but unbroken. Delilah ran to him, her arms wrapping around his solid frame. He held her close, his embrace saying everything words couldn't. "They tried to shut us up," she whispered against his chest. "But I showed them. The videos are out there now. People are talking." Eli pulled back slightly, looking into her eyes. His voice was soft but firm. "We don't run anymore. We stand." They stood together as the sun sank behind the jail, painting the sky in fierce oranges and reds. The shadows around them grew longer and darker, but neither of them looked away. They had spent too many years looking away, too many years accepting the darkness. "Not anymore." "Let's go home," Delilah said, taking his hand. She felt the strength in his grip, the quiet determination in his touch. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The kitchen was quiet, except for the soft clink of forks against plates. Eli and Delilah sat at their small dining table, eating leftover meatloaf neither of them really wanted. The events of the past 2 days hung heavy in the air between them. Delilah pushed her peas around her plate. "Maybe we should call your sister in Atlanta," she said softly. "Just until things settle down." Eli looked up, meeting her eyes. "This is our home," he said. 20 years we've lived here, built this life together." "I know, but—" The crash came without warning. Glass exploded inward from their front window, scattering across the living room floor like deadly rain. A large rock tumbled to rest against the baseboard, wrapped in paper secured by a rubber band. Eli moved with military precision, pushing Delilah down and away from the windows. "Get to the back room," he commanded, his voice tight with controlled anger. "Eli." "Now, Delilah." She hurried to their bedroom while Eli retrieved his service pistol from the gun safe. The weight felt familiar in his hands as he approached the broken window cautiously, staying low and to the side. Outside, spray painted across their white siding in jagged red letters, "Go back to Africa." An engine roared to life. Through the shattered window, Eli caught sight of a black pickup truck peeling away, the Iron Vulture's insignia clear on its tailgate. His finger tensed on the trigger, but he held back. That's what they wanted, an excuse to paint him as the violent one. Instead, he focused on the license plate, committing the numbers to memory before writing them down. TN847XKP. The truck disappeared around the corner, leaving only the acrid smell of burnt rubber behind. Delilah emerged from the bedroom, wrapping her arms around herself. "What did they throw?" Eli carefully unwrapped the paper from the rock. Inside was a crude drawing of a lynching, signed with the Vulture's logo. His jaw clenched as he set it aside as evidence. "We should call the police," Delilah said, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer. "Sheriff Daniels?" Eli's laugh was bitter. Might as well call his nephew Trent directly. He began sweeping up the glass, while Delilah took photos of the damage and the graffiti. They worked in practiced silence, falling into the routine of cleanup that too many black families knew too well. The phone rang, making them both jump. Delilah checked the caller ID. Unknown number. Eli took the phone, answering cautiously. "Mercer residence." "Mr. Mercer?" A woman's voice, professional but hushed. "This is Angela Price from the Herald Tribune. We need to talk." "Not interested in interviews." "This isn't about the diner incident," she said quickly. "Well, not directly. I've been investigating the Iron Vultures for months. There's something bigger going on." Eli's interest peaked despite his skepticism. "I'm listening." "Not over the phone. Can you meet me?" "Why should I trust you?" There was a pause. "Because I've got documents showing Mayor Harlan bankrolls the Vultures through shell companies. Property records, too. Dozens of black families who've sold their land to his development corporation over the past 5 years. All at prices way below market value." Eli's mind raced. The diner was on that stretch of road. Old family properties that had mysteriously changed hands. The Jenkins family, he said slowly. They swore they'd never sell their grandmother's place. Burned down 3 years ago, Angela confirmed. Insurance claim denied. They sold to Harlan's company a week later. Where do you want to meet? Monroe Library parking lot. 1 hour. Come alone. The line went dead. Eli shared the conversation with Delilah, who immediately shook her head. It could be a trap, she said. Could be the truth, too. Eli checked his watch. Those families deserved better than being scared off their land. Delilah took his hand. We all did. They moved to the front porch, sitting in their old wooden chairs. The spray paint gleamed wet and accusing in the security light. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked, and crickets chirped their endless summer song. Eli's hand found Delilah's in the darkness. The weight of generational trauma pressed down on them. Nights like this, stretching back through decades, through centuries. Black families sitting on porches, watching their dreams get vandalized, their safety threatened, their dignity assaulted. His voice was barely a whisper when he spoke. It's not about me anymore. It's about every one of us they've buried quiet. The words hung in the humid night air. A truth too heavy to be carried alone, but too important to be set down. They sat there together, watching, waiting, knowing that tomorrow would bring either answers or more questions. But tonight, they had each other. And sometimes that had to be enough. Morning arrived with a heavy mist clinging to the fields. Eli pulled his old Ford pickup into the library parking lot, where Angela Price waited in her weathered Subaru. She climbed into his truck without hesitation, clutching a thick manila folder. Head out to Old Veterans Road, she directed, already flipping through her papers. The stories out there. They drove in silence past the town limits, where neat suburban homes gave way to overgrown fields. The mist thinned as the sun climbed higher, revealing a landscape of abandoned dreams. Stop here, Angela said, pointing to a burned-out shell of what had once been a proud farmhouse. The chimney stood like a gravestone against the morning sky. Eli pulled over, his hands tight on the wheel. The Williams place, he said quietly. Used to be the best peach orchard in 3 counties. Burned down last spring. Angela held up a fire report. Ruled accidental. Faulty wiring. Just like the 6 other houses on this stretch that went up in flames over the past decade. They got out, gravel crunching under their feet. The charred skeleton of the house loomed before them, its windows like hollow eyes. Yellow police tape, faded and torn, still clung to a fallen post. All black-owned farms? Eli asked, though he already knew the answer. Angela nodded, pulling more documents from her folder. Every single one. And look who signed off on all the investigations. She handed him a stack of reports. Sheriff Randall Daniels's signature sprawled across the bottom of each page. A spider's web of corruption in black ink. The Jenkins fire, Eli said, scanning the dates. The Robinsons. The Turners. Each name was a family he knew. People who'd worked this land for generations, after coming home from wars, fought under the same flag that now seemed to mock their sacrifice. They walked the property's perimeter. Angela took photos, while Eli noted familiar patterns. Burn marks that didn't match the official story. Evidence of accelerants the reports conveniently overlooked. Here, he called, crouching near what remained of the back porch. See these marks? That's not electrical fire damage. Someone poured something here. Angela photographed the evidence. The Williams family said they got threats before the fire. Strange how that didn't make it into the sheriff's report. Eli stood slowly, memories washing over him. My father's friend, Mr. Carter, had land about a mile from here. James Carter, fought in Vietnam, came home, built something beautiful. He pointed east where new construction was rising. Lost it all in '95. First the threats, then a fire, then the bank calling in loans that had always been solid before. Let me guess, Sheriff Daniels handled that investigation too? His daddy did. Same badge, same lies. Eli's voice was heavy with generational weight. I was just a kid, but I remember Mr. Carter's face when he had to sign those papers. Said it felt like being in Saigon again, watching everything burn. They spent the next hour documenting what they could. Angela's camera clicked steadily as Eli recalled details about each property. Who'd owned it, what they'd grown, how they'd lost it. The morning sun rose higher, burning away the mist, but not the shadows of history. Back in the truck, Angela spread her evidence across the dashboard. 7 fires in 10 years, all ruled accidental. All the land sold to Harlan Development within months. And look at this. She pulled out a map marked with red circles. Every property ties back to Black veterans or their children. People who had clear titles, good loans, strong farms. Until they didn't. Eli finished. They drove back toward town, the silence heavy with shared understanding. Angela's pen scratched against her notepad as she wrote furiously. I'll need statements, she said. People willing to go on record about the threats, the pressure to sell. That won't be easy. Fear runs deep here. So does truth. Angela's voice hardened with determination. These papers tell half the story. We need voices to tell the rest. When they pulled up to Eli's house, Delilah was waiting on the porch. The spray-painted slur from last night was already covered with fresh paint. Her quiet defiance shone in the careful brush strokes. She approached the truck as they got out, her eyes taking in Angela's armload of documents. Found something? Eli nodded, explaining what they'd discovered. Delilah listened intently, her expression growing fiercer with each detail. Mr. Carter, she said when he finished, I remember his wife taught me to make sweet potato pie. They lost everything, and we all just watched it happen. Not this time, Angela said, but Delilah raised her hand. You're right, not this time. And I want to help. She turned to Eli. You taught me to fight with words, not fists. Now, let me. Delilah! Eli started, protective instinct rising. I know these families, she pressed on. I was a nurse at County for 15 years before they pushed me out. I took care of their babies, held their hands through loss. They'll talk to me. Her voice grew stronger with each word. They trust me. Angela looked between them, understanding passing across her face. We need every voice we can get. Eli saw the determination in his wife's eyes, the same fire that had drawn him to her all those years ago. He nodded slowly. All right, but we do this smart. We do this right. We do this together, Delilah said firmly, reaching for his hand. The three of them stood in the morning sun, surrounded by papers that told a story of systematic theft and generational trauma. But in their shared resolve, something else was growing. The first spark of justice, long delayed, but refusing to be denied. Dusk painted the sky in deep purples as Eli carefully mounted the third wireless camera beneath his truck's wheel well. The tiny lens, barely larger than a pencil eraser, would catch anyone trying to tamper with his vehicle. Years of military training had taught him to prepare for the worst while hoping for the best. Delilah watched from the porch, sipping chamomile tea. You really think they'll try something with the truck? They're cowards, Eli replied, testing the camera's angle with his phone. Cowards always strike when they think you're not looking. The feed came through clear and sharp on his screen. He worked methodically, installing 2 more cameras near their property line, one disguised in a bird feeder, another hidden in the branches of an old oak tree. Each one connected to an app on his phone, ready to record any unwanted visitors. The crunch of tires on gravel announced Angela's arrival. She parked her Subaru behind their garage, out of sight from the road. Her face was flushed with excitement as she approached. "I did it," she whispered, though no one was around to hear. "Got into the records office today. Told them I was writing a fluff piece about the town's development history." Eli finished securing the last camera. "What did you find?" "More like what didn't I find?" Angela pulled out her notebook. Every zoning file from the past 15 years, gone. Shredded last month, supposedly for space reasons. But get this, I caught Betty, the old clerk, on her lunch break. She's retiring next week, doesn't give a damn anymore. They moved inside where Delilah had coffee waiting. Angela spread her notes across their kitchen table, speaking in hushed tones despite being alone. "Betty says Mayor Harlan's been pushing to digitize everything, but certain files never make it to the computer. They just disappear." Angela tapped her pen against a hastily drawn timeline. "The physical copies get marked for shredding, and the digital versions never exist." "Convenient," Eli muttered, studying her notes. "But here's the good part." Angela reached into her bag, pulling out her phone. "While everyone was at lunch, I found this in the bottom drawer of Martha Harlan's desk, the mayor's sister, who conveniently handles all the town's bookkeeping." She pulled up photos of a leather-bound ledger. Page after page showed neat columns of numbers, dates, and cryptic initials. "Look at these entries." Angela zoomed in. "IV Security Services, regular payments, every month, 20 grand a pop." "IV," Delilah said. "Iron vultures." "Exactly. And the dates match perfectly with when each of those farms burned." Angela flipped through more photos. "They're not even trying to hide it. They just figured nobody would ever look." Eli studied the images carefully. "We need the actual ledger." "Way ahead of you." Angela grinned. "I'm going back tomorrow to follow up on my story. Martha always takes a 2-hour lunch at the country club. Plenty of time to borrow it and make copies." "It's too risky," Eli said. "They'll be watching you now." "They're watching you," Angela corrected. "I'm just the local reporter who writes about quilting bees and bake sales. Nobody takes me seriously." Her voice hardened. "That's their mistake." They planned late into the night. Angela would need exactly 20 minutes to copy the ledger. Delilah would create a distraction at the country club, keeping Martha occupied if she returned early. Eli would watch the office from across the street, ready to warn them if trouble approached. Around midnight, Angela needed to head home. "Meet me at the Walmart parking lot tomorrow at 6, she said. "Far corner by the garden center. Nobody parks there this time of year." The next evening came with agonizing slowness. Eli arrived early, parking his truck between two empty spaces. The garden center's seasonal display of pumpkins cast long shadows in the setting sun. Angela's headlights flashed once as she pulled up beside him. She looked tired, but triumphant. "Got it?" Eli asked as she climbed into his truck. She pulled a USB drive from her pocket. "Every page. Even found a second ledger in a locked cabinet. Goes back 20 years. Her hands shook slightly as she handed him the drive. "This isn't just about the farms, Eli. The whole town's been built on burned homes and broken lives." "You were careful?" he asked, pocketing the drive. "In and out clean." Martha never left the club. Seems Delilah's story about needing emergency medical advice for her personal problem was very convincing. Angela smiled briefly, then grew serious. "But Eli, there's more. These payments, they're not just going to the Iron Vultures. There are entries for half the sheriff's department, 2 judges, even the fire marshal. The whole system," Eli said quietly. "Built on ashes," Angela agreed grimly. "Just like you said." They sat in silence for a moment, watching the last customers straggle out of the store. The USB drive felt heavy in Eli's pocket. Years of corruption and violence reduced to strings of ones and zeros. "What happens when we release this?" Angela asked softly. "They'll come at us hard," Eli replied. "Everyone on those ledgers, everyone who's been paid to look the other way, they'll all have something to lose." "Good," Angela said, her voice steel-sharp in the growing darkness. "Let them feel what it's like to lose something for a change." The parking lot lights flickered on, harsh fluorescence casting their faces in stark relief. Angela gathered her things, pausing before she opened the door. "You were right about this town, Eli. About all of it." Morning light streamed through the kitchen window as Delilah hunched over her laptop, her fingers moving carefully across the keyboard. She'd spent hours organizing the evidence, creating a clear timeline that even a child could follow. The coffee beside her had gone cold, forgotten in her focus. "You sure about this?" Eli asked, standing behind her chair. "Someone has to take the first step," Delilah replied, double-checking the anonymous account she'd created. "Might as well be us." She started with the simplest proof: photos of the ledger entries showing payments to IV security services, alongside news clips of the mysterious fires. Each post was clear, direct, and damning. Her hands trembled slightly as she pressed upload. "Now we wait," she said, pushing back from the table. They didn't have to wait long. Within an hour, the posts started gaining traction. Local community groups shared them. Then larger accounts picked up the story. By noon, Harlan County corruption was trending in Tennessee. Angela called around 1 o'clock, her voice excited. "It's working! The station's been flooded with calls. Even the Nashville papers are asking questions." Delilah refreshed her screen constantly, watching the reaction spread. Some tried to dismiss it as fake news, but the evidence was too clear, too detailed to ignore. People began sharing their own stories. More farms lost, more families driven out, more suspicious fires ruled accidental. At 3, an email arrived from an unexpected source, the state prosecutor's office. "Dear Mrs. Mercer," Delilah read aloud, her voice shaking. "I'm Marissa Cole, Senior State Prosecutor for Civil Rights Cases. I've reviewed your posts with great interest. Would you be willing to meet privately to discuss this matter further? Time is of the essence." Eli checked the email headers while Angela verified Cole's credentials online. Everything checked out. They arranged to meet that evening at a cafe 2 towns over. Marissa Cole arrived precisely on time, her dark suit crisp despite the late hour. She carried herself with quiet authority, her natural hair styled professionally, her expression both warm and serious. "Thank you for coming," she said, sliding into the booth across from Eli and Delilah. Angela sat at a nearby table, pretending to work on her laptop. "I've been following similar cases across the state. But yours—" She paused, choosing her words carefully. "Yours has the evidence we've been waiting for." "How do we know we can trust you?" Eli asked directly. Marissa smiled slightly. "Because I grew up in a town just like this one. Watched my grandfather's farm disappear the same way." She opened her briefcase, removing a thick file. "I've spent 8 years building cases against corrupt local governments. But they're careful. They know how to hide their tracks." She spread photos across the table. Other burned properties, other ledgers, other victims. "Your evidence connects the dots, shows the pattern. With what you've found, we can finally prove intent." "So you'll help?" Delilah asked. "Better than that." Marissa leaned forward. "I'm officially opening a state investigation. As of this afternoon, every document in that town hall is legally protected. They can't shred anything else without facing federal charges." Hope bloomed in Delilah's chest. Fragile, but real. For the first time since the diner, she felt like they weren't fighting alone. Later that evening, they invited Angela over for dinner. The kitchen filled with the smell of Delilah's famous pot roast as they shared their first relaxed meal in weeks. Angela brought wine, And even Eli allowed himself a small glass. To justice, Marissa had said before leaving. It's slow, but it's coming. Those words hung in the air as they ate, adding flavor to every bite. Delilah told stories about her nursing days, making them laugh with tales of stubborn patience. Angela shared embarrassing stories from her early reporting years. Even Eli cracked a few smiles, the tension in his shoulders easing slightly. "We should do this more often," Delilah said, serving second helpings. "When all this is over." "When we win," Angela corrected, raising her glass. The conversation flowed easily, punctuated by genuine laughter. The kind that comes from relief, from friendship forged in struggle, from the simple pleasure of good food and better company. "Anyone want coffee?" Delilah asked as she cleared the plates. "I'll help," Angela offered, following her to the kitchen. They chatted while measuring coffee grounds, their voices mixing with the gentle clink of cups. Eli stayed at the table, savoring the moment of peace. Through the window, he caught the glint of distant headlights on the road. A car parked just at the edge of their property, almost hidden by trees. He didn't mention it to the others, didn't let it break the warmth of the evening. But he noted the position, the make of the vehicle, the way it remained perfectly still in the growing darkness. The coffee maker gurgled to life, filling the kitchen with its rich aroma. Delilah's laugh rang out at something Angela said. For now, at least, they had this moment, this small victory of joy in the midst of their fight. The watching headlights could wait until tomorrow. "Who wants pie?" Delilah called from the kitchen. "Made it fresh this morning." The surveillance outside continued its silent vigil, but inside, surrounded by the warmth of friendship and the sweet smell of Delilah's peach pie, they allowed themselves to believe in the possibility of justice. Midnight cloaked the Mercer home in darkness, broken only by pale moonlight filtering through the trees. Eli slept lightly, a soldier's habit never quite forgotten. In the distance, neighborhood dogs began barking, first one, then another, creating a chain of warning across the quiet streets. His eyes snapped open. Boom! The explosion rocked the house, sending splinters of wood and glass flying as flames engulfed the front porch. The bedroom filled with orange light and thick smoke. Heat pressed against the windows like hungry hands trying to break in. "Delilah!" Eli rolled out of bed, already moving. The smoke detector's shrill scream joined the chaos. Delilah sat up, coughing. "Eli, what's happening?" "Fire! Cover your mouth!" He grabbed a shirt from the floor, pressing it into her hands. The hall outside their room glowed menacingly, flames already eating through the wooden floor. Another explosion rocked the house, this time from the back door. They were being boxed in. Eli's military training kicked in, assessing exits, calculating odds. The window. It had to be the window. "Hold on to me!" He wrapped one arm around Delilah's waist. With his other hand, he grabbed the heavy bedside lamp and smashed it through the glass. Cool night air rushed in, offering brief relief from the suffocating heat. Delilah screamed as burning debris rained down from above. A piece of flaming wood struck her shoulder, searing through her nightgown. The smell of burned flesh mixed with the smoke. "I've got you, baby," Eli assured her, brushing away the burning fragment. "We're getting out." He helped her through the broken window, trying to shield her from the sharp edges. They dropped onto the grass below, just as the bedroom ceiling collapsed behind them. Delilah stumbled, clutching her burned shoulder. Her face was streaked with soot, tears cutting clean trails through the grime. "Our home," she whispered. "Everything we built." The heat was unbearable now. Eli pulled her away from the inferno, watching helplessly as 30 years of memories turned to ash. Their wedding photos, his service medals, the quilt Delilah's grandmother had made, all of it feeding the hungry flames. Tires screeched on pavement. Angela's car skidded to a stop in front of the house, her headlights cutting through the smoke. She jumped out, running toward them. "I saw the flames from my place." She helped support Delilah's other side. "My God, are you okay?" Before they could answer, sirens wailed in the distance. Red and blue lights painted the smoke-filled sky. But instead of fire trucks, 3 police cruisers appeared first, blocking the street. Sheriff Daniels stepped out, his face illuminated by the burning house. He didn't look surprised, he looked satisfied. "Well, well," he drawled, walking toward them. "Looks like someone got careless with matches." "This was no accident," Eli growled. "You know exactly what happened here." "What I know," Daniels said loudly, for the gathering neighbors to hear, "is that you just torched your own house for attention, trying to frame good people for your publicity stunt." "That's insane," Angela protested, holding up her phone to record. "They were inside. Delilah's hurt." "Put that phone away," Daniels snapped. He turned to his deputies. "Arrest him." Domestic terrorism charges. 2 officers approached with handcuffs. Eli knew he could take them both. His body tensed, ready. But Delilah's soft touch on his arm stopped him. "Don't," she whispered. "Don't give them what they want." Finally, fire trucks arrived. Paramedics rushed to check Delilah's burns while deputies pulled Eli's arms behind his back. The cuffs clicked shut, cold metal against his skin, still hot from the fire. "She needs a hospital," Angela insisted, supporting Delilah as the paramedics led her to the ambulance. "Oh, she'll get one," Daniels smirked. "Can't say the same for him." They shoved Eli into the back of a cruiser. Through the window, he watched his life turn to embers. Delilah's face, brave despite the pain, disappeared into the ambulance. Angela stood in the street, still filming, her expression a mix of fury and determination. The cruiser pulled away. In the rearview mirror, Daniels's eyes met Eli's, cold with cruel triumph. "Guess you'll sleep warm tonight." Eli didn't respond. He watched his burning home shrink in the distance, the flames reaching toward the stars like desperate fingers. The heat had melted the vinyl siding, revealing the bones of the house beneath, just like the fire had exposed the rot at the heart of this town. He thought about Delilah's shoulder, the pain in her eyes. He remembered the careful way she decorated each room, making their house a home despite the hostile neighborhood. The garden she'd planted in the spring, full of tomatoes and peppers that would never be harvested now. The cruiser turned a corner, and the glow of the fire disappeared. Darkness pressed against the windows, broken only by occasional streetlights. Each flash illuminated Eli's reflection, calm, controlled, but his eyes burning with an intensity that matched the inferno they'd left behind. In his mind, he could still hear the explosion, feel the heat of the flames. He knew the truth. This wasn't just about him anymore. It wasn't even about the house. This was their enemies showing their hand, revealing how far they'd go to maintain their power. The radio crackled with fire department updates. The flames had spread to the garage. The roof had collapsed. "Total loss," they reported clinically, as if they weren't describing the destruction of a family's entire world. Morning sunlight crept through the narrow window of Eli's cell, painting a thin stripe across the concrete floor. He hadn't slept, his mind replaying the explosions, the heat, Delilah's pain-filled eyes. The cell block's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, a constant irritant that matched his growing anger. The morning news droned from a TV in the guards' area. "Local man suspected of arson." He caught fragments of the story, his name dragged through mud, painted as a desperate man seeking attention. No mention of the history of fires targeting black families. No questions about why he'd burn his own home with his wife inside. A guard dropped a newspaper through the bars. The headline screamed, "Veteran torches home in racial hoax." Below it, a photo of his burning house, and Sheriff Daniels quoted extensively about troublemakers and outside agitators. Eli's hands trembled as he read. Not from fear, from rage. He needed to know if Delilah was okay, if Angela had made it home safely. The phones were broken when he asked to call. No visitors allowed. Complete isolation. He pulled out the small piece of paper he'd managed to hide, a gum wrapper with a phone number scratched on it. He'd memorized it years ago, never thinking he'd need it. The number belonged to Marcus Wynn, his old SEAL teammate. They hadn't spoken in years, but some bonds never broke. Deputy Carl Jenkins passed by on his rounds, younger than most here, with eyes that carried doubt instead of hatred. Eli had noticed him watching, thinking, questioning. "Deputy," Eli called softly. "My wife, is she—" Jenkins glanced around before answering. "ICU, burns and smoke inhalation, stable." He hesitated. "Reporter lady who was helping you. Nobody's seen her since last night." Eli's stomach tightened. Angela missing. Delilah hurt, his world burning down while he sat in a cage. "Could I make one call?" Eli asked. "Just one." Jenkins looked torn. "Phones are down." "Your cell phone then, please. I served this country for 20 years. The deputy's face shifted. He reached for his pocket, then stopped. "They got cameras everywhere now, but—" He slid a paper and pencil through the bars. "Write what you need. I'll handle it." Eli quickly wrote Marcus's number and a coded message they'd used in combat. "Spider web, 3 clicks south. Bring rain." To Marcus, it would mean trapped, need extraction, bring heavy support. Jenkins tucked the paper away and moved on. An hour passed. 2. Eli did push-ups in his cell, keeping his body ready. His mind calculated angles, exits, weak points. The SEAL in him never truly slept. The TV droned on. A press conference now. Mayor Harlan speaking about maintaining order and dangerous elements. The corruption was so blatant, it was almost beautiful, like a snake sunning itself in plain view. Near noon, Jenkins returned. He slipped a small flash drive through the bars. "Found this in evidence. Thought you should see it." His voice dropped. "They killed my cousin Tommy same way. Burned him out when he wouldn't sell his land. I was just a kid. Nobody did nothing." Eli palmed the drive. "Why help now?" "Because somebody's got to end it. All of it." Jenkins straightened up, resuming his official posture. "State prosecutor's been asking questions. Maybe this time it's different." The afternoon crawled by. Eli couldn't access the drive's contents, but its weight in his pocket felt like hope. He thought about Delilah in the hospital, fighting alone. About Angela somewhere out there, hopefully safe. About all the others before him who'd faced this same fire. At 4 o'clock, commotion erupted in the booking area. Voices raised, papers shuffled. Footsteps approached his cell. "Mercer," a guard called. "Bail's been posted. Anonymous source." Eli stood slowly. He knew who it was. Marissa Cole, the state prosecutor, moving pieces carefully. As they processed his release, he caught Jenkins's eye. The deputy moved close, pretending to check his paperwork. "They're planning to finish it tonight," he whispered. "Whatever you're going to do it fast." Eli nodded slightly. Outside, the late afternoon sun felt strange on his skin. The town looked different now. Every shadow potentially hostile, every passing car a threat. But he had what he needed. Evidence on the drive, Marcus surely moving pieces into place, and now Marissa Cole's invisible hand opening doors. He walked calmly down the street, aware of eyes watching from the sheriff's office. Let them watch. Let them think they had him running scared. The time for fear was over. A text message buzzed on the cheap phone they'd returned to him. Unknown number. Hospital. Room 412. She's asking for you. Delilah. His heart ached to run to her, but he forced himself to walk normally. One foot in front of the other. A man just released from jail, heading to see his injured wife. Nothing suspicious about that. But inside, plans were already forming. The flash drive felt heavy in his pocket. Evidence of corruption finally caught on camera. Marcus would have received his message by now, calling in favors, gathering resources. And somewhere out there, Angela was hopefully doing what she did best, finding the truth and getting ready to share it with the world. They thought the fire would silence him. Instead, it had burned away his last hesitation. The old Eli might have tried to work within the system, might have hoped for justice through proper channels, but that Eli had watched his home burn while his wife screamed in pain. That Eli was gone, replaced by something harder, something that remembered every lesson combat had taught him about surviving when the odds turned deadly. The evening air hung heavy with summer heat as Eli crept through back alleys toward the old Miller property, a forgotten farmhouse on the edge of town where Angela had set up her safe house. His military training took over, each movement precise and silent, watching for tails or surveillance. The house looked abandoned, windows dark and yard overgrown. But Eli spotted the subtle signs: fresh tire tracks partially covered, a dim glow from a basement window. He tapped their coded knock on the back door. 3 quick, 2 slow. Angela opened it carefully, baseball bat in hand. The sight of her made his breath catch. Her left eye was swollen shut, lip split, defensive bruises on her arms. But her good eye blazed with determination. "They jumped me outside the courthouse," she said, letting him in. 3 of them. Didn't expect me to fight back. She managed a pained smile. "Got some good hits in, though. Broke one guy's nose." The basement was transformed into a makeshift command center. Laptops hummed, papers covered folding tables, and a police scanner crackled quietly in the corner. Marcus Wynn sat at one computer, his massive frame making the chair look tiny. He stood when Eli entered, embracing him in a quick, fierce hug. "Should have called me sooner, brother," Marcus said. His voice was soft, but carried the weight of their shared combat history. "Got here as fast as I could." Eli nodded, throat tight. Having Marcus here changed everything, not just his skills, but the absolute trust forged in combat. "Thanks for coming." Angela pointed to a stack of folders. "This is what they tried to stop me from finding. Land records going back 20 years. Every black-owned property they've seized through intimidation or arson. Bank transfers. Shell companies." She shuffled through papers. "Mayor Harlan's fingerprints are all over it. But he's careful. Always 1 or 2 layers of separation." Eli studied the documents. Property after property, family after family forced out through legal means or violence. His hands clenched. "We need more than paper. We need them to incriminate themselves." "Mayor's annual fundraiser gala is tomorrow night," Angela said. "Every powerful person in the county will be there. All the players in one place." Marcus pulled up blueprints on his laptop. "Already scouted the venue. Security's minimal. They're not expecting trouble at their fancy party. I can get us access, plant cameras." "Not just cameras," Angela added. "Live stream everything. Multiple feeds, impossible to shut down quickly. Once it starts broadcasting, the whole world sees what happens." Eli paced the room, mind racing through scenarios. "They're expecting me to either run or try something violent. Either way feeds their narrative. I'm either guilty or dangerous." He stopped. "So let's flip the script. Make them expose themselves." They worked through the night, planning every detail. Marcus had brought high-tech surveillance gear from his private security company. Tiny cameras that could be hidden in buttons or cufflinks. Wireless microphones that looked like tie clips. Angela set up secure streaming channels and backup servers. Every contingency covered. "The mayor always gives a speech at these things," Angela said, pulling up previous year's photos. "Loves to brag about the town's progress, economic development. All those properties he stole, repackaged as urban renewal. Perfect timing then, Eli said. Right when he's basking in his own glory. Marcus cleaned a handgun with mechanical precision, his movements automatic after years of training. You know they'll have armed security, probably off-duty cops, guys itching for an excuse. That's why we don't give them one, Eli replied. No weapons, no threats. Just truth, broadcast live where they can't bury it. Angela touched her bruised face gently. They're scared. That's why they're getting sloppy, resorting to violence in the open. They feel their control slipping. Fear makes people stupid, Marcus agreed. Makes them forget themselves, show their true faces. Eli sorted through surveillance photos. The mayor glad-handing at events, the sheriff's suspicious meetings, iron vultures intimidating people in broad daylight. Such arrogant confidence in their own untouchability. Delilah's still in the hospital because of them, he said quietly. Others lost everything. Some died. Also, these men could play kings of their little kingdom. He looked at his friends. Tomorrow night, the kingdom falls. They worked methodically, checking and rechecking equipment. Marcus modified a server rack to fit in a catering van. Angela wrote code to mirror the stream to hundreds of sites simultaneously. Eli memorized blueprints and practiced with the hidden cameras until every movement felt natural. Near dawn, they finally paused for coffee. The basement walls were covered in photos, documents, and diagrams, a web of corruption laid bare. 20 years of injustice about to be exposed in one night. You know what happens after, Marcus said. Win or lose, this town won't be safe for you anymore. Eli nodded. It hasn't been safe for a long time. We just pretended it was. Angela checked her feeds one last time. Everything's ready. Multiple angles, backup power, secure connections. She looked at Eli. They wanted to make an example of you. Scared people into staying quiet. They wanted a spectacle, Eli said softly, checking the hidden camera in his tie clip. Let's give them one. The morning sun began to creep through the basement windows. In 12 hours, the mayor's gala would begin. All those powerful people gathered to celebrate their own success. Unaware they were walking into their own exposure. Eli touched the bandage on his arm, where glass from his burning home had cut him. Some wounds needed to be shown to the world to heal. The neon sign of Mason's Diner flickered against the dark Tennessee sky, casting an eerie red glow across the empty parking lot. Trent's motorcycle roared into view, followed by the rumble of his gang's bikes. They scattered gravel as they skidded to a stop, their chrome pipes still hot and ticking in the night air. Eli's black truck pulled up quietly behind them, its headlights cutting through the darkness. He stepped out, his movements measured and precise. The same diner, the same players. But this time, everything was different. His phone was already recording, broadcasting live to thousands who had witnessed Trent's confession at the gala. You should have stayed down the first time, boy, Trent shouted, his voice cracking with fear disguised as bravado. His nose still showed the crooked evidence of their first encounter. Eli said nothing. He walked forward, his boots crunching on loose gravel. The wind picked up, carrying the smell of rain. Behind him, lightning flashed across distant clouds. The iron vultures, 8 of them now, formed a half-circle around their leader. They pulled out chains, brass knuckles, and switchblades. The weapons glinted in the neon light, but their hands shook. They had seen what Eli could do. "Inside!" Trent barked at his men, backing toward the diner's entrance. "We finish this where it started." The bell above the door chimed as they burst in. The late-night waitress screamed and ran out the back. Chairs scraped across linoleum as the few customers fled. Eli followed them in, calm as still water, deadly as undertow. "You're streaming this?" Trent laughed nervously, noticing Eli's phone propped on the counter. "Let them watch. Show them what happens to people who don't know their place." Eli finally spoke, his voice low and steady. "You're right. Let them see exactly that." The first attacker came at him with a chain. Eli stepped inside the swing, caught the metal links around his forearm, and yanked. The man flew forward into Eli's knee, crumpling with a wet crunch. One down. Two more rushed him from opposite sides. Eli moved like liquid shadow between them, letting them tangle with each other. A quick elbow to one's temple, a sweep of the legs for the other. Their heads cracked together on the way down. 3 down. A blade flashed in the fluorescent light. Eli caught the stabbing wrist, twisted until bones popped, and slammed the attacker face first into a table. The wood splintered, coffee cups exploding across the floor. 4 down. "He's not human!" someone shouted. But Eli was very human. Each move was calculated, each strike the product of years of training. He wasn't fighting with rage. He was executing a mission. These men had terrorized his community for too long. The diner that had served hate was about to serve justice. Tables overturned as the remaining men tried to circle him. A chair flew at his head. Eli ducked, let it crash into the counter behind him. The metal napkin dispenser fell, scattering silver packets across the floor. Someone slipped on them, went down hard. Eli made sure he stayed down. 5 down. The next 2 came together, swinging wild haymakers. Eli stepped between their blows, his elbows finding pressure points, his knees striking joints. They dropped, gasping and clutching injured limbs. 7 down. Only Trent remained, backed against the same booth where he had first harassed Delilah. His face was pale, sweat rolling down his temples. The man who had seemed so big, so powerful that day, now looked small and pathetic. "My father owns this town," Trent said, his voice trembling. "You can't—" Eli crossed the distance in 2 steps. His hand shot out, gripping Trent's throat and pinning him to the wall. The phone on the counter captured everything. "Your father?" Eli's voice was steel wrapped in velvet. "Your father built his fortune stealing from black families, burning them out, killing their dreams." He increased the pressure slightly. "But you're worse. You enjoyed it, made it personal, made it sport." Trent's eyes darted around the ruined diner, his fallen gang members groaning on the floor, the overturned tables, the shattered glass catching neon light like blood. His kingdom of hate reduced to rubble. "The mayor," Trent choked out. "He'll kill me for talking." "The mayor's already in custody," Eli said. "Federal agents moved in right after your confession at the gala. But I wanted this part, needed this part, to happen right here, where you thought you were untouchable." Sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. Eli turned Trent to face the phone, still streaming. "Tell them again. Tell everyone watching what you did. To my wife. To my home. To all the families before us. I... Trent's facade cracked completely. Tears ran down his face. "We burned them out. All of them. Anyone who wouldn't sell to Harlan. The sheriff covered it up. My father laundered the money. Please, please don't kill me." "Kill you?" Eli released his grip, letting Trent slide down the wall. "No. You're going to live. Live and watch everything you built crumble. Live and face every person you hurt in court. Live with the truth you just confessed to thousands." Red and blue lights flooded through the diner's windows, casting wild shadows across the wreckage inside. The wail of sirens filled the air as federal vehicles screeched to a halt in the parking lot. Trent still sat slumped against the wall, tears and snot running down his face, while his gang members lay scattered and groaning across the floor. The front door burst open, and Marissa Cole strode in, her FBI vest gleaming under the fluorescent lights. A team of agents moved in behind her, weapons raised. "Federal agents! Everyone on the ground!" she commanded. Eli raised his hands slowly, stepping away from Trent. "It's all recorded," he said, nodding toward his phone on the counter. Live streamed. His full confession. Angela Price rushed in behind the agents, clutching a thick manila envelope. Her face was still bruised from her earlier assault, but her eyes blazed with triumph. "We got everything, Marissa. Land deeds, bank transfers, doctored accident reports. 20 years of corruption." The scene outside grew more chaotic as local police cars arrived. Sheriff Daniels's voice boomed through the parking lot, demanding to take control of the scene. Marissa turned toward the door, her expression hardening. "Not this time, Sheriff. This is a federal operation now." Daniels shouldered his way past two agents, his face purple with rage. His hand moved to his holster as his eyes locked onto Eli. "You uppity son of a—" A dark blur slammed into the sheriff from the side. Marcus Wynn, Eli's former SEAL teammate, took Daniels down with practiced efficiency. The sheriff's gun skittered across the floor as they crashed into a booth. "Watch your six, brother," Marcus said, pinning Daniels with a knee to his back. "Some snakes bite when they're cornered." More agents poured in, securing the scene. They pulled Trent to his feet, cuffing him as he continued to sob. His gang members were zip-tied and lined up against the wall. Through the windows, Eli could see Mayor Harlan being led out of a black SUV in handcuffs, his expensive suit dirty and torn from resisting arrest. "Mr. Mercer," Marissa approached Eli, her voice professional but her eyes showing respect. "Your live stream reached over 50,000 viewers in the last hour. The governor's office is already calling for a full investigation into the county's leadership." Angela held up her phone, still recording. "The local news stations are picking it up now. Every major network in Tennessee will be running this by morning." She turned to Eli. "You did it. You broke their whole system wide open." Sheriff Daniels thrashed under Marcus's hold. "This ain't over. You can't—" "Can't what?" Marissa cut him off. "Can't arrest you for conspiracy? Obstruction of justice? Hate crimes?" She crouched down to meet his eyes. "We have tape of you taking bribes. Testimony from your own deputies. Bank records showing kickbacks from every suspicious fire for the past decade." The diner's parking lot had become a circus of flashing lights and gathering crowds. Local residents stood behind police tape, many holding up phones to record. Some looked shocked, others vindicated. The truth was finally too bright to ignore. Two agents hauled Trent past Eli toward the door. The gang leader could barely walk, his legs shaking. "My father," he whimpered. "Please, I want my father." "Your father's got his own problems," Marcus said, still holding Daniels down. "Whole Mason family's about to learn what justice tastes like." Angela moved closer to Eli, her voice low. "You should know. Someone leaked your service record to the press. Your medals, your commendations. The town's finding out exactly who they've been trying to run off." Eli shook his head. "That's not what this was about." "No," she agreed. "But it matters. They need to understand that the man they treated like dirt was a hero all along. Makes the shame hit harder." The sound of more vehicles approaching drew their attention. Through the glass, Eli saw a familiar car pull up. His heart stopped when the back door opened. Delilah sat in a wheelchair, pushed by a nurse from the hospital. Her arm was bandaged, her face still showing burns from the house fire, but her eyes, those eyes that had first made him fall in love, shone with pride and defiance. Eli moved toward the door, but Marissa touched his arm. "We still need your statement, Mr. Mercer." "Take it outside," Marcus suggested, seeing the look on his friend's face. "Man needs to see his wife." They helped Eli navigate through the chaos of evidence collection and arrested suspects. As he stepped into the cool night air, Delilah wheeled herself forward to meet him. The crowd behind the police tape fell silent, watching. "You shouldn't be out of the hospital," Eli said softly, kneeling beside her wheelchair. Delilah reached up with her good hand to touch his face. "Wasn't going to miss this. Not for anything." Her eyes swept over the scene. The arrested mayor, the cuffed sheriff, the fallen iron vultures being loaded into transport vans. "Told you the truth would burn brighter than hate." Tears welled in Eli's eyes as he pressed his forehead to hers. Around them, camera flashes popped like stars, recording the moment when justice finally came to their small Tennessee town. The neon sign of Mason's Diner buzzed overhead, no longer a symbol of segregation and fear, but a beacon marking the spot where change had finally, irrevocably, arrived. 3 weeks later, autumn painted the Tennessee hills in rich golds and crimsons. The morning sun cast long shadows across the newly paved parking lot of what used to be Mason's Diner. Fresh paint gleamed on the restored building, and a brand new sign hung proudly above the entrance. "Mercer's Place, where everyone belongs." Eli pulled into the lot, his truck's tires crunching on fresh gravel. Delilah sat beside him, her burns healing well but still visible on her arms. She wore them like medals now, refusing to hide the scars that told their story of survival. "Look at that line," she said, pointing to the crowd of people waiting outside the diner's doors. Black, white, young, old, all mingling together, sharing coffee from thermal cups as they waited for the grand opening. James and Marie Carter, the new owners, stood at the entrance, greeting everyone. They were local heroes in their own right. Their family had lost 3 homes to mysterious fires over the years, but they'd never stopped fighting. When the truth about Mayor Harlan's land-grabbing scheme came out, they were among the first to receive compensation. Eli parked at the far end of the lot, trying to avoid attention. It didn't work. People noticed them immediately, and a ripple of whispers spread through the crowd. Some raised their phones to take pictures. "Still can't get used to that," Eli muttered. Delilah squeezed his hand. "They need their heroes, baby. Let them have this moment." As they walked toward the entrance, Eli noticed Angela's feature article posted in the diner's window. The National Tribune had run it last week. "The Veteran Who Fought Back: How One Man's Stand Against Corruption Changed a Town." The story had gone viral, sparking investigations into similar patterns of discrimination across the South. James Carter spotted them and rushed over, his face beaming. "There they are, our guests of honor." He embraced Delilah carefully, mindful of her healing injuries. "Marie's got your usual booth ready. Can't open without our first official customers." Inside, the diner had been transformed. Gone were the dingy walls and worn fixtures. Warm lighting illuminated local artwork, and the booths were upholstered in rich burgundy. But it wasn't just the decor that had changed. The atmosphere felt different, lighter somehow, as if decades of hatred had been scrubbed away with the old paint. Marie Carter hurried over with 2 steaming mugs of coffee. "On the house, forever," she insisted. "After what you 2 started." "We just stood up," Eli said quietly. "You all did the rest." It was true. Once the truth about Mayor Harlan came out, the town had transformed itself. His development company had collapsed, revealing decades of fraudulent deals. Properties were being returned to their rightful owners. The Iron Vultures had disbanded, their clubhouse now a community center. The local paper ran daily updates on the federal investigation. Sheriff Daniels and half the police force faced charges. Trent Mason had turned state's evidence, trading testimony for a lighter sentence. His father had fled to Florida, leaving behind a trail of debts and broken promises. Angela Price walked in, notepad in hand, and slid into their booth. "Still won't give me that interview, will you?" she asked, grinning. "Got nothing to say that you haven't already written," Eli replied, but his eyes were warm with friendship. "Fine, but you should know. That contractor you recommended? He's helping rebuild 3 more homes this week. People are calling it the Mercer Project now." Eli shook his head. He'd been quiet about his work helping restore homes lost to Harlan's arson campaign, but word had spread anyway. Local businesses were donating materials, and volunteers showed up every morning to help. The breakfast rush began flowing in. Every table filled with a mix of faces that would have been unthinkable just months ago. Children's laughter rang out, mixing with the clatter of plates and the hum of dozens of conversations. "Remember that morning?" Delilah asked softly, looking at the spot where it had all started. "When they spilled my coffee?" "Feels like another lifetime," Eli said. "Another world," she corrected him. "Look around, baby. Look what grew from those ashes." Through the windows, they could see the hills rising misty and blue in the distance. The same hills that had witnessed generations of quiet suffering now watched over something new being born. Every morning brought more changes. New businesses opening, old wounds healing, bridges being built between communities that had stayed separated for too long. Marie brought over their usual breakfast order: waffles for Delilah, eggs and grits for Eli. The food steamed invitingly on plates decorated with the diner's new logo, a phoenix rising. "Saw your brother yesterday," Eli told Marie as she set down their plates. "He's doing good work with that youth program." "Who'd have thought?" Marie smiled. "A black man running the community center where the Iron Vultures used to plan their raids. Mama would have never believed it." The morning sun climbed higher, streaming through the windows and catching the silver in Delilah's hair. She had refused to cover her burns, just as she refused to be ashamed of her size or her voice anymore. Her laugh carried across the diner, full and free, the way it used to before fear had tried to silence it. Eli watched her, his heart full. She caught him staring and smiled. "What are you thinking about, soldier?" He took her hand across the table, his thumb brushing over her wedding ring. The same ring that had glinted in the firelight the night their house burned, now shining in the dawn of something new. "We didn't just fight back," he said softly. "We changed everything." I hope you enjoyed that story. Please share it with your friends and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. In the meantime, I have handpicked 2 stories for you that I think you will enjoy. Have a great day.